Hello and welcome to Beyond the Graves and Stars, the horror and sci-fi podcast. My name's Andy and I'm a bit of a film nerd. Been doing this podcast for a while now and we focus on mainly franchises and original and remakes of classic horror and sci-fi movies. At the moment, Adam Whybray has been joining me to talk about the Phantasm series, and we've literally just sat down and watched the third instalment. So have a listen. This is our thoughts. Neither of us had seen this movie before. Adam, welcome back.
Hello.
You all good?
Just about. I'm trying to talk, stay vaguely alert.
Yeah, you've not had much sleep.
No, I'll just say it straight up. I wasn't sure whether to hide that from the listeners, but no, my wayward neighbour, who, to be fair to him, is very elderly and clearly in a lot of pain. He sort of hobbles up the stairs and he's quite decrepit, and I think he drinks quite a lot to deal with it, and that means he stays up most of the night swearing angrily at the TV. So I've got some silicone air earplugs, but still didn't sleep very well.
So I'd like to thank you even more for getting up, and we put Phantasm 3 on at 10:30 this morning.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I've been really looking forward to this.
I've
enjoyed the first two. We both have.
Yeah.
We've just finished it. But before we crack on, I just want to mention, because I don't want to forget, your podcast, the Still Scared.
Yeah.
In the last episode I listened, it was the last episode you put out, was the Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator.
Yes, it was. That was the last one. So we're currently editing the episode on TerrorVision and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Admittedly, neither of those are really children's horror. Who Framed Roger Rabbit, family film, nominally, which certainly scared me as a kid. Not horror per se, more obviously a kind of film noir comedy. Yeah. And the TerrorVision came up on a list of children's horror. And it's really odd because it has like child protagonists, and the plot, which is about an alien coming to Earth and eats things, and the kids at one point try to teach it about human culture and show it TV, a bit like E.T.
Yeah.
It feels like a kids' film, but then the two adults are swingers, and there's quite a lot about their life as swingers.
Because I've never seen TerrorVision. I know the band who did get their name from that.
Yeah.
I assumed it was a 15 or 18.
It's a 15, but it's really odd because basically the 15 is largely because of sex jokes.
Okay.
Of which there are a lot.
Yeah. I mean,
so it's really odd because it kind of feels like a kids' film. Yeah. Then just because I can't imagine any adults really liking it because it's basically got child protagonists. It's goofy. It's not scary.
Well, it's like the film I love, Monster Squad.
Yeah.
That's a 15 for the same reasons. There's a little bit of violence in it, but there are sex jokes. And it was the 80s. Things were like that.
Oh, it's very much late. And I can't really... It's one of those weird 80s films you're like, who is this for? I can't really imagine. I think I said on the podcast, I think Beavis and Butthead are basically the ideal audience for TerrorVision.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so me.
yeah.
And I'm going to guess Who Framed Roger Rabbit, it was the shoe bit that scared you.
Oh, well, the shoe bit, but also later when Judge Doom is melted himself.
Oh, yes, yeah. And Christopher Lloyd's very scary. That film.
Yeah, and originally it was going to be Tim Curry, apparently, but they decided he was too scary. Mm-hmm. Apparently his performance was so intense that they decided it was too much.
He's a scary man. So then he went on to do Legend, probably.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, which we also probably need. Another one where it's like, it's sort of a kid's film. A lot of people watch it as a kid, I think.
Well, I think a lot of films from that era, so family films is the term. So yeah, you can put that in that. But as we grow up and younger generations don't pick these things up, we forget they were made for kids.
Well, or they're just, it's very, like Gremlins, I think. Again, Gremlins, I think my DVD is a 15.
It was definitely 15.
Yeah.
It's gone down to a 12 now.
Okay. But like, ultimately it kind of feels like a kids' film, but then with some really dark bits.
Yeah, I mean, in America, that was the first. That and Temple of Doom were the first two PG-13.
Okay, that makes sense.
So
yeah,
I mean, I've always seen Gremlins as a family film, but with horror elements. And I vividly remember when that was on TV, the first time I ever saw it. It might have been the premiere. That there was a big right before the news, family friendly. After news wasn't, which I've never seen with anything else before. How that film flips and gets darker about 40 minutes in.
I mean, you earlier used the term gateway horror, talking about arachnophobia.
Yeah,
and I think that's a really good phrase actually, or a useful one, because I think something like TerrorVision feels like a gateway horror. Yeah, like it's that kind of odd in betweeny. And I don't know. I like talking about those kind of films on the podcast, ones where you're like, another one, which one of my favourite episodes in a film I love is Paper House.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
I think Paper House is like a masterpiece, pretty much. So same director as Candyman.
Yes, yeah, pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and that's based on a kid's book, on Marianne Dreams. So that's totally a children's book.
Cool.
And then again, 15 rated film, and it is quite disturbing in places, but child protagonist. Yeah, very much about how a child sees the world. So it doesn't really feel like it's for adults, but at the same time, it probably is too dark for most kids.
Yeah. I definitely want to give that a go. But I don't know. Well, the first episodes we done for this podcast were on Candyman, the Candyman franchise. And James, who was the guest, recommended that to me. So I still haven't watched it. I have to. But if you're going to dive in, and you should dive into Still Scared, and if you're like me, you don't want to filter through all of them.
That's fair.
I'd recommend, if you're a fan of this podcast, start with Return to Oz. It was a great film, and that's something that many people consider a horror film as well as a kids film.
I mean, God, who would have thought that a sequel to Wizard of Oz would start with Dorothy being taken to a mental asylum?
Only in the 80s, I keep saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's crack on. So we've got Phantasm 3. If you haven't listened to the first two episodes on this, go find them. I'm sort of doing them alongside Trances and House. And Adam's joined me for the first two, who was new to all of these films.
Yeah, and we're no longer in the 80s.
No, we're in 94. And this film called Lord of Death, Phantasm 3. Originally, it was going to just be called Lord of Death when there was more studio involvement, because they thought people would have forgotten the Phantasm series. The one before was made in 1988, so it's only 6 years. So that's not too long.
Yeah, but I guess the culture changed quite a lot in that period. Like, we've kind of gone through the slasher boom into... I mean, the 90s was a weird time for horror.
Yeah, this is pre-Scream as well.
Yeah.
Which is when it kicked off again.
Yeah, but even, I guess, you have, like... I Know What You Did Last Summer, and that kind of wave, kind of teen slashers you get in the 90s.
Yeah, which was just after this, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I do think this is probably quite an odd time for horror.
Yeah, and it's around the time of when Candyman was kicking off, as in the sequels, and you would get things like Tremors sequels, Critters. There wasn't a sort of new movement to it. Yet, just before that. So, in a way, strange time for this to come out, but also I feel it works because they haven't really changed it to fit in with the current trends.
Oh no, it's still very much a Phantasm film.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw on probably Mubi someone comparing it to Army of Darkness, and that makes sense to a degree, in as much as, like, I can see how you could compare the Evil Dead films in terms of how they changed genre to Phantasm, in as much the first one more of a straight low budget horror, second one more of kind of action film with comedy elements, and then the third one kind of goofy. But I think actually this does retain more of the horror from the first Phantasm. It has the action set pieces, but I think less, probably because it's lower budget than the second one, I'd guess.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's $2.5 million.
Okay.
So I get the feeling. I've got my book.
Because the second one, I'd say the second one had more action set pieces.
I have the feeling the second one had like $4 million or something. Yeah. More studio involvement, which this one was distributed by Universal, but they didn't do anything with it. And there was a big fallout with the director and the studio because he wanted to pick the cast members. Because in the second one, it's a different actor play Mike. And in this, they've brought back and his name's escaped. It's A. Michael Baldwin, isn't it? Who returns? Who was Mike in the original one?
Yeah.
And at first, I thought weird fallout because he's barely in it, but he does come in the first half of the film. He's barely in.
Yeah.
Do you want to? It's not much of a. Do you want to quickly summarise the plot?
Okay. Well, it starts off with Mike in hospital after being attacked at the end of Phantasm 2. So it seems to pick up directly after it. We don't know how long he's been in hospital, so maybe a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months. Reg is going to visit him in hospital, and it seems like Mike is in a coma or something. He's halfway between life and death. Reg's going in, having an amicable chat to the nurse on duty, and then we see that somehow, I don't know if it's one of the Sentinels, there's a new name now for the spheres, which are Sentinels.
Finally named them.
And it seems to have got into one of the nurses, right? And one of the nurses turns around and they're now, zombie drone, robot, whatever they are when they get turned by the Sentinels, and is attacking Mike. Mike manages to fight back and kill whatever her, and it seems like Mike and Reg will be back together again, but soon enough Mike is actually kind of kidnapped by the tall man and pulled into the tall man's dimension, and Reg is kind of left alone, bereft, and so once again sets out on the trail to find the tall man and defeat him once and for all, and just sort of crossing the states in his car as he does, and then picks up a couple of friends along the way. So he meets some new characters who band together to try to save Mike and then defeat the tall man. Yeah,
and he goes from deserted town to deserted town, picking up people on the way basically, and coming across scavengers and that sort of thing. Who, a lot of the towns, if you remember from the second one, basically the tall man will go through and just kill everybody off in a town, won't he?
Yeah,
and
it gives it more of a slightly post-apocalyptic vibe in this film, I think. We did spend time in these desolate towns, but I like this sort of focus on what happens to the towns afterwards in this film, like the idea that these scavengers move in. I think that's quite effective. It brings in a new threat, kind of a sort of urban threat, which links this in my mind to the kind of tough on crime kind of policies of the 90s. And you see this a lot in kind of, I guess, sort of early 90s films, right? I'm sort of thinking of sort of late 80s, early 90s sequels to films, like the Predator sequel, right? Also vigilante films that are set in urban spaces where, marauders and gangs have taken over. And you get a bit of that here, with these sort of obviously no good, lower class gang members who Reg has to sort of face off against a bit now.
Yeah, because there's a trio of them.
Yeah,
he comes across first, I believe, and then he's basically tricked. But there's two guys and a woman, and the woman, he likes women, doesn't he, Reg?
Reg likes women. Well, he's a lonely man, and I think he just wants some solace and comfort. And he's a horny man. Yeah. He's a lonely, horny man. Basically, that's one of Reg's main character traits.
And he's lured in. But saved by the first friend he picks up on the way, Tim, who is played by Kevin Connors, who isn't in a lot, but was a bit of a child actor in a few other films, but nothing. This is probably his biggest film.
Well, he's good in this.
He's good, and he goes. Well, we can't mention the intro of him without mentioning Home Alone.
Okay, so basically, this trio of hoodlums ends up, more fool them, invading this house, which has been sort of set up. If I was a serial killer, this kind of house I'd want. Not that I want to be a serial killer,
or even thought about it.
But if I was, then this is exactly the kind of house I'd want. So we sort of set it up like a kind of spooky carnival with like clown puppets, but it's all booby trapped as well. So there's a kind of horrid clown doll that also it sort of swings down. Right, so it's sort of rigged up to the ceiling. It swings down and has knives that I guess pop out of it. Yeah. And then it swings into them and knifes them. And has a laughing clown voice. And this kid appears and he's wearing one of those horrid, a bit like those. the baby mask in the music video for Dookie. Therefore, Brain. Not Green Day song.
Green Day, yeah. Brain Stew.
That's not right. Green Day fans are not enjoying us right now.
Brain Stew is
brain damage. Brain. I think I'm cracking up. Am I just paranoid?
I just want you to carry on. That's their big song. And Basket Case.
Basket Case. Thank you.
We should know that. It's named after a horror film.
Yes. And also in Brazil, the mask that Michael Palin wears.
Yes, yeah.
So, sort of chubby baby doll face. It's quite creepy. So he pops up and he basically vigilantes the trio.
Yeah.
One of his there's a lot in the second film. There was a lot of kit, a lot of gear.
Yeah.
Like if you remember, we had that tooling up sequence in a hardware store. Slightly less in this film, but a nice bit of kit you get. The child's developed is a frisbee with switchblades glued around the side of it, so you throw the frisbee and then catch them with the blades, and he manages to behead or at least sever the jugular.
Really cool scene. Practical effects I think are great in this.
Yeah.
But the way when you first meet the kid, he's got the mask on. I think you're supposed to think, is it one of the little, what we call Jawas?
Yes, and they've got a new name now, don't they?
Yeah, they're called Lurkers now. Lurkers.
Okay.
And it's good they finally named them, so we stop calling them Jawas.
Yeah.
But I will say, for the rest of this podcast, and when we do the others, I'm still going to call them Jawas.
Okay, that's fine.
Just easier.
Well, he's also wearing a little red coat or a red hood, and I thought it looked like the angry little children in the Brood, the Cronenberg film.
Yes, yeah.
But anyway, I'm not always, up for a child character, but I found him quite likeable, to be honest.
Yeah,
he gets Reg out of his scrape and rescues him. Yeah. Tells Reg he owes him one.
Yeah, he does it more than once in the film.
Yeah, he rescues Reg more than once.
And apparently the director brought him in as more of a, obviously there was a child in the first one who's grown up, and he wanted that element again. He missed that element.
I think that makes sense. I think it's a good call because these films do have they're not family films, but they're really likable. They're not perfect films. They're really likable films, and I think maybe these unlikely heroes, like having Reg, this old ice cream man guy, is an unlikely hero, and then having just a child, it does give it, it's not Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? No. These are kind of unlikely heroes, and it kind of does make the films sort of more relatable, maybe more fun.
We've all been through childhood.
Yeah.
Right? So we've been there, and you can remember what it's like to be scared as a kid. But you have more empathy for a kid than, say, a 30-year-old man, I think.
I think so.
So I like that element, but it works in this because it's not just kids. If it was just a team of kids, then it would feel like a kids' movie, whereas this doesn't feel like a kids' movie. There's elements, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think as well, we all know that, especially in this era, kids want to watch these films. So throw a kid in that's more relatable for them as well.
Yeah, I think that's probably partly why.
Yeah. And this was an 18 when it came out.
Really?
It's 15 now.
Yeah, it's funny. It's got one scene where... So the next character we meet is Rocky.
Yeah. Who was great, played by Gloria Lynn Henry, who hasn't done too much, but was in The Devil's Advocate as well, which I haven't seen for years. Yeah,
no, she's good in this. Pretty charismatic. She gets to be the kind of cool character. She's introduced with a pair of nunchucks, and she's actually one of the first characters we've seen really be able to fight back against the Sentinels.
Yeah.
So normally these metallic spheres tend to just lock onto someone, and then the blades come out, they pinion themselves to someone's head, and then the drill bit comes out of it and drills into their brain, and then all the blood spurts out.
So when we first meet her, she's with a friend who I imagine they're scavengers as well.
Seems like it.
But more likeable, friendly ones.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take long till her sidekick or partner is killed to death in the way you just described.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the two characters are probably the first non-white characters.
Yeah, I think so.
The first one was 78 and then 88, and I think they're bringing more they're deliberately
a bit more varied representation in this film,
and back then it wasn't necessary, but I think it's good they did.
Yeah,
and she's got very Grace Jones look.
She does look quite like Grace Jones,
who would have been big 10 years before this,
But yeah, she's a cool character. I say it's nice to see someone being able to fight back against the Sentinels using her nunchucks. I mean, there's always, certainly in the second film and now in this one, a fair bit of, I guess, sort of martial arts, and it reminds me that obviously the director went on to do Bubba Hotep.
Yes, which is a great film.
Which also has those kind of action elements.
I do want to mention as well that nunchucks, now in the 90s, do you know all the controversy
No,
with nunchucks?
I don't.
Now, the guy who was, I forget his name, like head of the BBFC, hated nunchucks and just didn't want them in films. And a lot of martial arts films, when you watch them from the 80s, and they're like 18 certificate for like no reason. And Ninja Turtles, the first Ninja Turtles movie, the original edit, they just took all the nunchucks out. It was a big thing at the time. And even worse, the second Brady Bunch movie, now 12 certificate, the certificate didn't go up, but he didn't let it have a cinema release. It had to go straight to video because there's a comedy scene with nunchucks in it.
Oh my gosh, that's really a weird hang-up.
It's weird. This guy was weird. I forget his name, but it was when he died that like Chainsaw Massacre and The Exorcist just were allowed to come out.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I mean, obviously coming from a good place.
To be honest, I think you're way more likely with this film to have kids copying the gluing razor blades to the edge of a frisbee than copying the nunchucks.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it would have affected us. I think when it came out, it would have been an 18 anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it has, the violence is very cartoony, but, there's a fair bit of blood when it happens and spurting, popping eyeballs and exploding heads, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And you've got Rocky bare-chested in the kind of dream sequence.
They threw in the sex scene. That sort of had to be there for the time.
I mean, in a way, it's a bit of a shame because otherwise the films feel weirdly innocent and Reg himself is a little pervy, but there's something, maybe because he's a little bit inept, and there's something kind of lovable about Reg in the fact that he's like this greying or very grey older guy who's basically devoted his life to looking after these kids, and it never seems weird. It doesn't feel creepy that he's desperately trying to look after Mike and now this new kid Tim. It seems like he genuinely does care about these boys and want the best for them, and I think because of that he's quite likeable and seems quite sweet. So normally when you have Reg giving ladies the eyes or making some mild innuendo, you do kind of feel like, oh, Reg, what you like. And I don't know, that's maybe not a good thing, but it doesn't feel as sleazy as you might expect.
And also, that these women will stand up for themselves.
I think that's it,
and that he wouldn't go too far. He tries it on, but he wouldn't force himself.
I think you feel pretty secure in that. So I think that does help. There's a bit where he's being, a bit creepy when
he wants to share the bed with her in a hotel.
And clearly she's not keen on this, and then she basically pretends that she is interested in him, and then handcuffs him to the bed so she gets an easy night. And Reg is like, but he seems happy enough. He's happy enough about it. The next morning he seems.
I think humour's changed, and it was seen more comedy, dirty old man.
Yes,
Sid James chasing Barbara Windsor.
But weirdly, it's not. It doesn't feel as bad to me as in Carry On or something.
No.
I don't know quite why, but it doesn't feel as.
I think he's more. You feel for him.
It's not quite on the buses, right?
No, he's not there. But he's a lonely, likeable man who. He's just a bit desperate, opposed to a horny older man who's trying to cheat on his wife.
Maybe that's it. There is something a bit tragic about Reg. I think he's quite kind of.
When we first meet Rocky, there's a scene where he proper looks at her ass.
Yes.
Which is I was like, sort of. Then it made me laugh because I was like, well, it's 94, so it's 31 years ago, and the joke is really just look at him being a bit pervy.
I think maybe that's why it doesn't feel as bad as it might, is that Reg very much feels like the butt of the joke
Yeah, and you know he's not going to, like I say, he's not going to go too far.
Yeah, he seems like...
It's almost a bit like he knows he's not going to get anywhere either.
I think that's... No, I think that is sort of how it feels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is more cheeky than pervy.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's interesting because obviously, the temptation is to just sort of dismiss all... Like, for me, I find this less creepy than, say... we mentioned Home Alone, but like John Hughes films, which actually really bother me on rewatching, and I do find, like even like The Breakfast Club and stuff, like I do find they feel and unpleasant in the way that the guys, tend to treat the girls or young women in those films.
Yeah.
They do feel really unpleasant to me in a way that makes me feel really uncomfortable. I don't like it. I don't find them charming.
I like them still for nostalgia reasons.
Yeah.
And there's racism in them films. I didn't realise. But I find it really strange with these films how youngsters love them. Things like Breakfast Club. But I think they love them in a way that we'd like a film from the 50s.
Yeah, maybe like a weird old artifact.
Yeah, and they totally get it.
Yeah.
And I know it's a horror podcast, but I'm still angry at the end of The Breakfast Club with Ali Sheedy's character. Leave her.
Yeah.
Why have you made her look like an idiot?
Oh, yeah. No, but like with Phantasm, like these are really likable films. Yeah. I'm trying to work out because I don't think it's a perfect film, right? Phantasm 3. It'd be surprising if it was. Like the pacing's a bit uneven. There are stretches where not that much is happening, right? Yeah. Most of the special effects are really good. I think the practical effects are good. There are a couple of slightly ropier moments. Luckily, it uses early digital effects pretty sparingly.
Yeah.
And, when they are used, they're fine. I don't think it has quite the momentum of 2, and it doesn't have quite the weird dream feel of the first film. The dream
bits in this were the bits what seemed to pad it out.
Yeah, they don't work as well as they do in the first film.
No. But the practical effects and the zombie characters the free scavengers turn into zombies kind of controlled by the tall man. I like them. I like the effects.
I like them too.
And
they looked a bit kind of Return of the Living Dead or even Brain Dead or something.
Yeah, I thought a bit Near Dark as well. And I like that element to it. And I do feel the practical effects sides of it were the best things about the effects.
Yeah.
But the digital stuff is done subtly and it's not overdone. Now, my worry for 4 and 5 is it's going to be CGI heaven.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Although I'm interested in 4, particularly because, they're all a bit older and I get the sense that 4 is a bit melancholy in some ways.
And it was the last one that Don Coscarelli directed.
Yeah, and obviously, these films are about death, right? And with the character of Mike, you very much get this sense that he's never got over the death of his parents and his brother, right? Like he's never really. I like the fact that you never get the sense that Mike's going to recover.
No,
because some people don't. Some people go through stuff that they don't get better, and
it's not get better. It's about dealing with it, and he's not dealing with it well.
Yeah, and I don't know, and it puts Reg in an interesting position because it's like Reg's position is kind of a caregiver basically, and it's like on some level Reg needs to accept that he can't wholly save Mike.
No,
that Mike isn't going to go back to how he was before his brother died. It's not going to happen, and so there is this sort of odd sadness in it, in that Reg is kind of trying to fully defeat the tall man. And we kind of get that, within the film, the tall man's some kind of alien intelligence, and it doesn't seem like it's very easy to kill him, frankly.
No.
But he's also like the embodiment of death, basically.
Yeah.
And you can't kill death. Death comes for us all. You can't get rid of death. And I think some of the melancholy in the films is that kind of... I think it taps into a child's incomprehension in the face of death. This kind of, but I should be able to fight. I should be able to do something. And no, you can't. People will die, and your parents will die, and people you love will die, and that is what it is.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the characters can't quite accept that. And they just.
I don't know. No, hopefully they don't do this. But they could wrap the whole thing up at the end of part 5 if it's all in Mike's head after the death.
It is quite possible.
Yeah.
You still have... I think in this film, they make it clearer as to what's a dream sequence and what isn't. In the first film, you move between dream and reality very woozily. Like it'd be very hard to say watching the first film exactly when the character is dreaming and when they're not. In this film, it's more signposted. Like, okay, this character is now dreaming.
Yeah. The woman is interested in Reg, clearly a dream.
Yeah, pretty much.
I just want to quickly mention as well that we always mention Reg, but another returning character is the dead brother, Jodie.
Unexpectedly.
And it's always the same actor, and I never think about that. You know, it's you think, you big notice that it's the original Mike back. Obviously, Reg is now basically the star of the movie.
Yeah.
But it's always him as well, and he pops up. And when you first see him in this, you don't see the face, and I'm thinking, is it the same actor? And I did say to him when we watched it, yeah, it is the same guy. And you just don't think of him. He's not in the artwork. You don't.
Yeah, well, I guess it's odd that he's back in it. I mean, it's sort of inexplicable to a degree, right? Like, he is dead. Now, we know that the tall man is able to zombify the dead and bring them back. His main business, certainly in the second film, is taking the dead, shrinking them down, doing something to their brain so they become his sort of mind slaves, and then on his alien planet he uses them as slave labor. Okay, kind of makes sense. In this film, we get a little bit more explanation about he cuts away everything but, I can't remember which part of the brain it was, but it's like he shrinks the brain basically, and encases it in one of the Sentinels. So in the corpses, basically what you have to do is you have to inject the brain with this kind of strange yellow gloop, revivifying, I don't know what it is, but some kind of alien gloop. You inject the brain of that, then you shrink the brain and encase it in a metal orb, shove that back into the head, and then that's how you create a sort of mind slave zombie. Okay, so that's normally what he's done, and they get shrunken down, and it explained this in the second film by saying that the gravity on this alien planet or dimension is different, so that's why they have to be really small. Now, is it Jodie?
Jodie, the brother,
the brother. He's not shrunk down. This hasn't happened. Now, seemingly, his brain has been encased in an orb, but somehow he's not wholly in the thrall of the tall man, right? And so he sort of appears as the orb, but he also is able somehow to materialize himself in his sort of human form, but he says he only has a small amount of energy to do this. It's like his battery life isn't very good. So he can kind of appear, possibly as, I didn't really quite get if this was as like a projection. It might be that he's sort of being projected, or that he's like a ghost, and so he kind of appears and talks as himself and gives some advice, and then he mostly sort of is in the bull form.
He appears in dreams and out of them. So a bit confusing that. But Jodie is still along for the ride, even if some of the time he's in the form of a metal ball. And there's like a good metal ball and a bad metal ball.
Yes.
And the darker ones are the good ones.
Okay, yeah.
That's how I sort of saw that.
I mean, it's really funny because it feels like a lot of effort is being put into the very confused lore of these films. And I think you're right. I think with the first film, like, they just threw a lot of elements into the mix, and it was all about making it feel dreamlike. And it's like all the films since have been like, right, okay, let's try to make this make sense.
That's what I was going to ask you about, because there's more reveal about why it happens. And one of the things about the first movie is the mystery. What do you feel about learning what's happened?
I think you need to for the sequels. Like, don't get me wrong, I think the first film is kind of preferable. You know, I like David Lynch, and it really annoys me when you get these YouTube explainer videos saying, you know, Twin Peaks, 100% explained. This is the answer to Twin Peaks. It's like, no, it isn't. That's not how David Lynch works. So you're meant to sit with the mystery. The dude spent loads of his time meditating. It's all about sitting with not knowing. Sit with the uncertainty, right? Keep the mystery alive. And I like that artistically. That tends to work for me. But I don't think that would have been sustainable for a whole bunch of sequels.
No, not for this. And the way that it's developed into, I mentioned the last one reminded me so much of like a Nightmare on Elm Street sequel. And this still has the feel of the first film, but has turned into an 80s, 90s franchise. And I kind of like what they've done with it. and you know it's backtracking, and the stuff that the reveals weren't planned when they made the first one. But as I said to you during it, I think they've done a better job than George Lucas done with the Star Wars prequels. And obviously, I think of Star Wars because of the Jawas, but that did come to mind. I thought they've done a good job, but then there has been time in between the films for them to think about it.
And it doesn't feel egregious in the way that it often does with M. Night Shyamalan films.
Oh God, yeah.
Right, like, I would go to bat for some of his films. Like, I actually like The Village quite a lot, actually. Yeah. I thought Old was all right. Knock at the Cabin's all right. But the worst aspect is the fact that you then have to have this ridiculous explanation of how it all makes sense at the end. It's like with Old, at the end it's like, okay, it was all like a big pharma experiment. I'm giving away the twist, but I don't care because it's stupid. It's like, we don't need to know that.
Wasn't Old based on a graphic novel, though? So I can't really blame him for
that. Maybe that's why he liked it, though, because it's like, the idea of people are suddenly turning old on the speech. That's cool.
Yeah.
Right? But actually, we don't really need the explanation. It's like, it doesn't. It's a bit like at the end of Psycho when you have Hitchcock's sort of insertion psychiatrist character, like giving us all a lecture about, well, he suffered from what we call the Oedipal complex. It's like, no, don't do that. Whereas there's nothing quite as info dumpy in this. You don't get like Reg making some big speech.
Yeah.
You get bits of information. It's dropped in throughout the film, and that's fine. I think it makes sense.
And the sort of road movie side of it, which the 2 and 3 are.
Yeah.
I think that helps with the flow of the film, and it's a ride, so you don't really need all that.
Yeah.
But also, one thing I hate is people who pick films apart and find fault with little things, and I do think,
like little continuity errors. Yeah.
And I think if you add the exposition in, sometimes it actually gives you more stuff to criticise. Whereas I just like to go with the flow.
Oh, I agree. Like, you might as well try to meet a film in the spirit in which it was made, and you shouldn't. One thing I like about, or I think sort of admire about you, Andy, is you do tend to, enjoy films, but I think it is better to look for the best in films, because there are bits of, I'm not a massive Citizen Kane fan, but in terms of films or Vertigo, so I do like Vertigo. Yeah. There are bits in Vertigo that, don't quite work, little visual effects that seem a little bit awkward now, or maybe just, but it would be stupid to watch Vertigo and just focus on the small, focus on all the things that make it great. And, there are loads of things to enjoy in the Phantasm films, so I'm not, I don't, want to just sort of...
I'll sum up how I feel about a lot of films and franchises. I know several people who didn't like the 4th Indiana Jones film. A lot of people didn't like that film. But the reason they gave is it's aliens now, and there's God in the other one. You can't have both. Why? It's a film. It's a fantasy action with fantasy elements. Yeah. You can. Who's to say that God doesn't control the aliens as well in this universe? So that's a nitpicking because they didn't want to like it. Or if they don't like a film, they have to specifically say why.
I think you're right. I think it's often that intuitively they don't really like it, but it's like you've almost after the fact coming up with a reason to not like it.
Yeah.
And it's fine not to like something, but you don't need to kind of be pedantic. And
that's the word.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I do find these films really likeable. I think they're a fun time, and I like the fact that there's a bit of action, there's a bit of horror, there's a bit of comedy.
And they're, as we've said in the other episodes, they're always films that we've seen around, the posters, the videos.
Yeah.
But I think they're underrated. They were on the 3rd one. I am worried, as I said after the 2nd one, that it's going to go really downhill. Yeah. But I'm surprised people aren't talking about them more. There's more merchandise about.
Yeah,
you
I
see
agree.
the spheres, and there's a really nice. I think it's deleted now, but there was a DVD box set, Anchor Bay. I've done it in
I saw that,
and the one I've got, Arrow, the Blu-ray box set, is fantastic. And you've got the sphere in a nice little box that looks like the sort of brick stuff in the films. But it's the sort of thing that when I go to a Comic-Con, I'd expect to be able to buy T-shirts and that sort of thing. And who knows that, over time, it might spark. It's like recently... It only came out a week or so ago, the latest of the Fear Street movies.
Oh, yeah.
in that, I picked up early on. They walked past a cinema. It's set in the 80s, and Phantasm 2 is on the name on the board. And then later on, they go to the cinema and they're watching it, and you see clips of it. And I'm hoping youngsters are like, "Wow, what's that? It looks really cool." And in the scene you see is one of the spheres going into someone's head, and that's iconic, but it should be more iconic, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And to be honest, personally, you know, I remember we did Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Involved Cole.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons it didn't really work for me, just, you know, I like moments, is it feels so different from the first one. And it's like, that's okay, but on some level I kind of wanted it, you know, the first film is such a masterpiece, I kind of did want it to feel a bit more like it. And I like the fact with Phantasm that, each film has been different, but they still feel of a piece. They still feel like they belong to the same universe.
Yes, totally.
And I'm sure keeping a lot of the cast helps.
Yeah, definitely. And with Chainsaw Massacre, I mean, I love the second one.
Yeah, I know.
But the first one is one of, if not my favourite horror film.
I mean, it's up there. Absolutely a masterpiece. It's
but
astonishing.
I think it's like Blair Witch in the way that's been done. Why try to recreate it?
Yeah.
So I get it. I mean, I think with a sequel to Chainsaw Massacre, you've either got to do it like they done it or not do it.
Yeah, maybe.
And I feel the same when it's a franchise I might tackle, actually. The Highlander franchise.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the second one, I don't know if you've seen it.
No, I haven't.
Do you know the premise?
No, not the second.
Well, of the first one is that they're immortals and they battle and you chop their heads off and you get their power. And in the second one, it turns out they're all aliens and it goes to space.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, I say about the Indiana Jones thing. Now, this is such a big thing that it doesn't feel at all like the first one. And I want to rewatch it because I remember it just being, without simplifying things, just being bad. And then the third one, they kind of forget all the space stuff and carry on. So I'd be really interested to look at that again, even if it's not for the podcast, to see what I think of it now. Because I was, when I was a kid, like, it's too different, I didn't like it.
Yeah, I mean, that said, you know, I mean, I am contrary. I'm sure not consistent with this because I love Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, and obviously has very little, if anything, to do with the first two Halloween films.
Yeah, but I think that's why it works in a way, because it's not the same characters but going the complete other way with it, so that gets away with it more.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well just call it Season of the Witch or something. Like, it doesn't really need to have, apart from the fact, you know, that it's got some of the same personnel, like Carpenter, working on it.
Yeah, I mean, the House movies are a bit like this. The only thing I'm doing that, I've covered 1 and 2, and 3 and 4 are coming out soon. And there are connections later on, I believe, from what I remember. But the only connection between 1 and 2 is basically it's a horror film set in a house, and each of them stars a different member of Cheers.
Well, I know that Evolution of Horror did all of the Hellraiser movies, and I know some of those later ones, like the screenplays weren't even written as Hellraiser films, and they just, like, you know, shoehorned in some of the, I want to say trilobites, that's not right. What are they called?
Oh, the Cellites.
Yeah. Crowbarred them in just to say, oh yeah, it's a Hellraiser film.
Yeah. If not, it would be, but if Mike from Evolution Horror is listening to this, you should get a medal for sitting through all those films.
Yeah.
Because he did, and then he had to talk about them. And the first few I loved, don't get me wrong, and I liked the remake. But some of the sequels, when I was in my DVD collecting stage, that was Blu-ray, I was getting all the Hellraisers, and I was just like, why am I doing this? Yeah. They got really bad. Yeah. And I love a bad, well, not bad, but a cheesy sequel. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast, is to sort of show people the good side of them. Yeah, and obviously, I don't know, we're going to do 4 and 5 at some point. The 4 and 5 of this I might hate. We'll see. I'll say if I do. But so far, I mean,
3 for 3.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
Same here.
And we haven't really given any spoilers away, but
not too much. I don't want to quite say about the ending.
Yeah, it's.
Although, as ever, you know there's going to be more.
Yeah, it goes there. But Coscarelli said, after making this sort of half jokingly, that if they were to do a 4th one, he'd run out of ideas, so it would just be for money. He literally said that. He quoted saying that. So who knows with the 4th? But I think he's a good director, and he's got a passion for this. And he'd just come out of the Beastmaster stuff. Yeah,
well, I did say that some of the sound effects that the Sentinels make, I did wonder if they were left over from Beastmaster. There's some sort of liony noises.
Yeah, and this is few years before Bubba Hotep as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
That was 90 or early
I think
2000s?
I think it's very early 2000s.
2000s.
Yeah.
So he's a director who I think, if it was now and he'd have made a film like Phantasm, he'd have been snapped up to do a Marvel film.
Oh, yeah.
And then the Marvel film would have flopped and he'd have had no career.
Yeah, so it's actually for the best in a way that he had the career.
Yeah. Ratings on this film, it's 6 out of 10 on IMDb.
Okay.
38% on Rotten Tomatoes, or Tomatoes, depends what you want to say. And the Letterboxd, 3 out of 5.
Yeah, that seems. I'd
So it
probably
seems-
give it like 2.7. So
Yeah.
I'd probably 3 out of 5 sounds good to me.
I'm sticking with that because I really enjoyed this. I was expecting this to be the one I didn't. It's 4 for me.
And it seems like there have been some films because I look at your letterbox, very good letterbox, and obviously you tend to rate. I would say you tend to rate high.
Yeah.
But there have been some films recently that you haven't enjoyed. I noticed. I saw some proper 1-star reviews from you. I think you go to like half a star, which must be rare. You gave something a low rating.
I gave Hurry Up Tomorrow 1, which it's the director of...
Have you got your review up for it?
Yeah.
I think you should read your review because I was shocked. I was like, this is uncharacteristic, Andy.
Yeah, I'm not going to swear, but it's the director of It Came at Night.
Okay.
And it's basically an ego project for the singer The Weeknd.
Oh, is it The Weeknd?
And
okay.
it's...
I mean, he's fairly talented, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I don't really listen. What I've listened, he seems like a
fine.
pretty talented guy. I
And he was
guess.
in Uncut Gems as well.
Yeah.
And it's Jenny, I forget her name, who's in Beetlejuice, the sequel, Scream, X, and she's Wednesday in the TV series Wednesday.
Oh, Jenna, not Jenna Malone, Jenna Ortega.
That's it, yeah. So my review for this is called Hurry Up Tomorrow. I've given it 1 star, so not a half. Hurry up and end. Everybody involved should be effing ashamed.
I mean, that's strong. That's strong words.
Yeah. And the reason it's got 1 is probably because it was quite well made and the cast are good.
Okay.
But I was like, oh my God. Yeah, so I haven't been too, I gave a 2.5 to The Ritual. Which
You weren't very into the new Wes Anderson?
That's 2.5, yeah. It's Wes Anderson by numbers. It feels like someone spoofed it. I mean, it's probably, my horror ratings have been high still. And last night I watched finally, I've been putting it off for 16 years, the remake of The Karate Kid, because the new one's out, and I'm seeing it today. And I didn't mind the remake of The Karate Kid, and better than I thought it'd be. Jackie Chan's in it though, so if I give it any Jackie Chan film under 3 stars, I need a kick in the face. So, Jackie Chan rules. So just a few more things about this movie. It's the first one that is considered straight to DVD or video at the time. It had a very short, in some places of America, 2-week run at the cinema.
Although you said nowadays
that's a proper release, isn't it? But I imagine it was a really small release. And the budget was 2.5. And Reggie Bannister claimed in an interview that it actually made 8 million in those 2 weeks. So it was profitable.
That's pretty decent, yeah.
And it's in the top 100 straight to video movies ever. So it was a big success. And there was...
Up there with The Return of Jafar.
Yes. Or the Robin Williams falling out with Disney. And and it won the Fangoria's Chainsaw Award for best limited release of that year. And in 2007 on the DVD, probably the Anchor one, there was an unrated version, different cut. So probably a bit more violence, and they did film an alternative ending as well. But I think
hopefully more violence rather than more sex with Reg.
Yeah, I mean that seemed shoehorned in, and it'll be interesting to see whether, as we go on, you get more of that.
No, he's going to get too old, Andy. He can't in the fifth film. I think he's like 80 or something.
Not necessarily with him.
Oh, okay.
But this is a worry of mine because I think as we go on to the last one was 2005.
Yeah.
Where I'm thinking, okay, so it's more modern, so it should be less offensive in those of these sort of things thrown in.
Yeah.
But then when you think that's the era of American Pie and all that kind of stuff.
God.
So I'm hoping
I think it was a pretty early mid 2000s was a pretty loathsome time for cinema, frankly.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, well, that bro humour stuff.
Oh.
Glad we're over that. But it's still make sequels to a lot of these films, but
they're probably mostly direct-to-video.
Yeah.
Well, direct-to-streaming now, obviously.
Direct to the bin. So, yeah, I mean, anything else you want to add?
Not really. Just that, yeah, I enjoyed it once again, and I hope that Phantasm 4 is still decent.
Yeah. And I've just done a little bit of research. Out of the 3 zombie guys, scavengers, one of them is in loads of films, looking up the older guy. We mentioned John Hughes. He was in Only the Lonely, the John Candy John Hughes film. But he's really recognisable as it's not John Hughes, but I always think of this as that era of films. Adventures in Babysitting, he's like a gangster in that. The best film with the superhero 4 in, if you ask me. And he was also in some Clint Eastwood, that sort of stuff.
Okay.
And the actress who was the zombie, who got a face cut off, who I thought was going to, in a lot of the, when looking this up, I think she's in the trailer and was in a lot of the, when you look up the images.
Material.
But she does come back into it as a zombie. She's an estate agent now, and you click on her Instagram page and it says actress estate agent, and it's all about the houses she sold, which I think is quite cool. And but she did go on to be in other things. I think she was in, like, every actress in every horror film I talk about. She was in Seinfeld, I think. So that Jerry Seinfeld got through a lot of girlfriends.
That's one thing you can say for him. It'll be on his gravestone.
Yeah. Why all the girlfriends? What is that about? And on that note, listen to your podcast.
Yeah, well, I was going to say on that note, I'd say that at least Reg is better than Jerry Seinfeld.
Yes, and he's definitely better than Michael Richards.
So there we go.
So Mike is better than Michael Richards.
Yes.
Yeah, so Seinfeld. I loved it, Seinfeld. I still find it funny mostly, but some of it that's very dated.
I just think that as individuals, maybe they're pretty... Get in the bin.
What, the cast, you mean?
Yeah. I'm mostly thinking of the guys. I'm sure Julia Dreyfus is fine.
Yeah, she's one of us.
Yeah.
And Jason Alexander was in Pretty Woman as a very nasty version of George. I watched that recently. I watched Pretty Woman, and on Valentine's Day on my own. I've sent it to Reg. There was nothing else on. But yeah, he's in that. Well, I'll leave you on this because it's a horror and sci-fi podcast. Watch The Burning. Have you ever seen The Burning?
No.
It's 1980, I believe, and it's a slasher movie that... Who's the big makeup guy? His name escapes me, and I've met the guy who was in From Dusk Till Dawn.
Oh, yeah, I know who you mean. I'm tired, Andy. I know who you mean.
It's Tom Savini. Tom Savini. He turned down Friday the 13th 2 to do this movie.
Yeah.
And it's a really good summer camp teen slasher.
Sweet.
And Jason Alexander plays a balding teenager in it. Well worth watching. Adam, I'd like to thank you very much for doing today, because it's not easy.
Cheers, man.
When you've been so tired. So you get yourself to bed.
Oh, I would. I've got work, but I would.
If Reggie was here, he'd come with you. And we'll do parts 4 and 5 when we can.
Yeah, sweet.
Thank you kindly. Double big thanks to Adam. That couldn't have been easy. He had literally no sleep, or very little, as he said there. But I'm glad he enjoyed it. It was great watching the film with him and talking about it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe on everything. If you want to write a little review, 5-star reviews really help, apparently. If you didn't like it, don't worry about doing that. That's fine. But you can find us on YouTube, Spotify. I think it's on Audible. Amazon Music and Apple, as well as pages on Facebook and Instagram. There'll be more episodes coming very soon. We're continuing with looking at the House franchise. Going to start the Childhood Ruined ones, where we look at kids' stories or films or books that have been turned into horror films. And continuing with the Trancers franchise, and there'll be some more coming up soon. I'm talking to some guests about coming on. I will be at some point looking at all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies with various different people for those ones, as in different guests for each installment of the franchise. That might be a while off, but just to let you know that things are happening, we're doing more. So yeah, get in contact, comment on the things. Let's talk about these movies if you wish to. If not, just do whatever you can to help spread the word. But it is nice to talk to you all. Thank you very much for listening, and be back very soon. Hello and welcome to Beyond Graves and Stars. My name's Andy. This is a horror and sci-fi podcast, and this episode we're focusing on the third instalment of the Phantasm franchise. Adam Whybray, film scholar and host of his own podcast, which we'll talk about in a sec, it returns. We're looking at all these movies, so go back and have a listen to our podcast on the first and second that you can find in amongst the other episodes we've got. I'm also currently looking at the House franchise and the Tranches franchise. So yeah, have a listen. I hadn't seen this movie before, nor had Adam, and we literally just sat down, watched it, and then gave our thoughts. And all I can say is, if you like 80s style horror, made in 1994, this one, I'm going to start again because I am talking rubbish again, but I'm not going to swear because I don't like swearing much. Hello and welcome to Beyond Graves and Stars. My name's Andy. I am a horror and sci-fi nerd, and in this podcast we look at horror and sci-fi movies. At the moment we're focusing on a few franchises, including House and Trances. This episode, Adam Whybray, film scholar and host of his own podcast, which I'll talk about in a minute, returns to talk about Trances. Fucking hell.